Okay. Yep. Welcome, everybody. We've got Kit Pharo here with us. Brian Gale's going to give us a prayer to get this thing started.
Our dear Heavenly Father, we're thankful, Father, that we can gather together by way of the internet and that we can discuss things that are important for our future. We pray, Father, that will enlighten us and teach us the things that we need to know to be prosperous and to maintain our freedom. We love thee, Father, and we say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Brian. Thank you for that. I appreciate your prayer and invocation on this meeting here today. So as we kick things off with Kit Pharo here, again, we are very honored to have him as our guest speaker today. After the last class that we had with Seth Itzkin, my wife and I visited, and we know the plight of many of our fellow ranchers here in the West, that you're buried in snow, cold calves, a lot of calves are perishing. Things are pretty tough conditions all around. And we thought, who could speak to this, both from a fellow rancher standpoint who's probably been in the trenches, but also somebody who could offer a ray of hope and maybe ways that we can adjust our operations so that we don't repeat the same mistakes and we're not guilty of that insanity of doing the same things over and over again and trying to get different results. And both Selena and I felt impressed that Kit Pharo would be the person to talk to. And so, as you know, this is a different schedule than we normally do on our second and fourth Thursdays. We thought this needed to be timely. It needed to come out. Obviously, there's nothing that we can do right now to delay the gestation period of the cow, but we can adjust things in the future. And so we may not have complete control over or any control over what the weather does, but we have control over certain things. And that's what we're going to talk about today is not only calving in sync with nature, but other principles that will lead to ongoing profitability, not just in the bad years when we're buried in snow, but in every year. And Kit certainly has been an advocate for that. He's been a paradigm breaker. He's been someone who is not afraid to swim upstream and push against the common beliefs taught and accepted as truth. And it's not been an easy road. As I've started down this journey of teaching, the bigger your message is, the bigger target you are for the naysayers and for those people who are going to look for a target to shoot at. And I'm sure, if we could see Kit, he's probably got many arrows in his back. And he's certainly grateful that he's lived through all that and that he's willing to stand behind his mission and the message that he has, and also to continue to share that with others. So the way this will go, this is a little different format than normal. This will be more of a conversation. Probably, at least initially, if you have questions, the best thing would be to put them in the chat or to raise your hand. But we'll just get Kit started here, and then William and I will monitor the chat and we'll interject if there's specific questions. Also, if you would, as I've said before, we tend to get what we intend. So what are your intentions for this meeting here today? 1, 2, 3 intentions. I mean, this is the middle of a work day for all of us. It's 9 o'clock here in Nevada, and for some of you, it's noon on the East Coast, but you're taking time out of your day. And I want to honor that. And we want to be sure that we are adding value for the purpose for which you've shown up here. So if you would just type in the chat what you want to get out of this meeting here today. And I believe that even if what you are specifically asking isn't answered by either of us here today, but setting that intention, opening yourself up to inspiration, that intention will be answered. And I've seen that happen with me. So there's power in setting intentions. So again, what is your intention for our meeting today? Type that into the chat. So Kit, I didn't really read a bio. I don't know that anybody needs a bio for Kit Pharo. We know who you are, but is there anything that is, well, this is a trick question. I was going to say, is there anything unique about you? Is there anything that maybe the public doesn't know about you that might be something just a an interesting tidbit to add some humanity to who Kit Pharo is.
You said you weren't going to ask any hard questions.
Okay. Well, there I go. Broke my rules.
Yeah. I don't know. And you know, we came back to where we are now in 85. I'd been away from the agriculture, this type of agriculture, for 15 years. And you know, at that time I thought, okay, I'm going to show everybody around here. And this is the area I grew up in, not the exact area, but close. And I'm just going to show all these neighbors here how to do things. And I just like everything else, I just about went broke trying to show everybody how to do things. But I realized that, you know, in the 1980s, those of you who are old enough to remember, the goal at that time within the beef industry was to make cattle as big as you could, as quick as you could. And I had a few mentors. My dad was still alive. Chip Hines was alive. Don Palmer, a few others. And we would get together and we'd say, you know, this is ridiculous. You know, the only thing we really want to maximize in this business is profit and happiness. Trying to make cattle bigger, we couldn't see that working. And then it kind of dawned on me, you know, and again, I needed the support of this group. We called that our support group. Without a support group, it's real hard to swim against the flow. But I realized then that, you know, many things status quo wise are wrong. You know, what is status quo today was new and innovative maybe 50 years ago, but is no longer new and innovative. So, and then I realized, you know, whether we're talking about religion or politics or ranching or just about anything, I'm pretty much anti-status quo in every area. And I think that's gotten a whole lot of arrows in my back, but at the same time, if you persevere, you will succeed. Because the status quo almost always, you know, it reaches a point where when it's at that point, it is the status quo. It's no longer where it needs to be. You know, what I'm doing and what we've been doing for the past 10 or 20 years is new to the status quo. Eventually, I perceive that what we're doing now is going to become status quo, and we're going to have to be moving beyond. And this is something Chip Hines always liked to talk about. But you know, a lot of lessons are learned the hard way. A lot of lessons I didn't have to learn because I had friends and I could see what was going on with other people. So, you know, I didn't have to do that. But, you know, this calving out of sync with nature, you know, my environment, we're a desert environment. So most years, you know, we don't get that much snow. And we say, well, you know, the weather's nice in January, February, whatever. We should be calving. And I never did calve that early. My dad had calved earlier when he was in business. And basically, that's an April snowstorm broke his back, not literally, but at that point, he said, I can't take this anymore. You know, when you lose 25, 30, 40% of your calf crop in one major storm, he said, it's not worth it. I mean, he took that personal. And I think a lot of people do. And that's why, you know, we're saddened by what's going on. But Chip Hines was always wants to say, study nature, do what nature, imitate nature. And I think calving in sync with nature is, you know, that's a no-brainer once you see it. And we shouldn't have to go through a storm a year like this to see it, but most of us do. So, you know, I always tell people, you know, when do the deer have their babies? When do the elk have their babies? Those sort of questions. When you study that, you know, you're going to see that in most of North America, you know, calving in sync with nature is going to be mid-May into the 1st of June. You know, the Mediterranean environment in California is different. The fescue environment from Missouri to the East Coast is different. Calving in sync with nature is the same, but fescue has taken over that area. And when God created Missouri, there was no fescue. So, you know, our Missouri or fescue herds are all fall calving simply because of the type of grass that we're dealing with there. It's very toxic in the summertime. It's the best grass ever in the wintertime. So there are differences. I was surprised. A lot of people say, well, I live in Colorado, so May is good for me. The farther south you go, maybe Texas or wherever, the earlier I can calve. And I said, well, look around and see when the deer have their babies. And if you get to Chihuahua and the El Paso area of Texas, the smart producers are not calving until mid to late July there. That's the monsoon season. So that's when the deer have their babies. God has figured all this out, and we just need to, imitate what he's already told us.
What was it that put you on to later calving? I know schools now are teaching that. Dick Diven, the Ranching for Profit School, which Dick is no longer with us, but he was a big advocate of that. Was it just something you figured out on your own at that time, or?
Well, I think the group I was hanging out with at that time, it was kind of a badge of honor to see who could be the laziest. And, if you can make this business work and be profitable without doing much work, that was kind of our badge of honor. But it was in the mid to late 1990s that Don Palmer, 60 miles away from us, fairly good sized rancher and friend of ours, but he went to a Dick Diven school. And at that point, I was still, I had not been convinced. My thought was like everybody else's, all of my late calves were dink calves. And so I figured, okay, if I move my calving season, I'm just going to have a whole herd of dink calves. And that's not true. No matter when you calve, your late calves are going to be dink calves. And that's it. But Don came back from the Dick Diven school. We had our little support group get together. We called them our bull sessions. And he says, he kind of went through the reasons and why. And Don and John Palmer moved their calving season with their cows from the middle of March to the 1st of May. They started calving their heifers the 1st of June. And all of this, I said, okay, I'm not a pioneer. I'm going to watch what they do and see how it works. And he kept good records, but in 1 year they went, they saved 70% of their feed and labor expenses by moving their calving from March to May. They got 90% of their calves born in 30 days. When you're calving in March, you can't do that in most environments. We don't have green grass in March. We barely have green grass in May on a good year. Other things that have happened since then that we picked up on, well, maybe I need to back up and say, a lot of times I throw that out there that they've moved their calving season for the cows from the middle of March to the 1st of May, for the heifers to the 1st of June. And I didn't say anything at the time, but I thought this Dick Diven must be an idiot. What? Every university is telling us to calve our heifers 4 weeks ahead of our cows. But I kept an open mind, or I tried to, and we were calving everything, cows, heifers. We were not calving our heifers near the house. They were out with the cows. It was in April, like we would start around the 10th of April. And again, we would have to feed because we don't have anything growing in April. And dead grass isn't enough to support a lactating cow. But I remember we were calving our cows and heifers together. A lot of our first calf heifers calved towards the front of the calving season, and that's not abnormal. But I remember, and a lot of those heifers that calved toward the front of the calving season, 1 year later, they came up open. They could not raise that calf in April and get bred back to have a calf the next year.
Yeah.
So I remember it was about the middle of May, maybe the 20th of May, we had a red heifer. I don't remember her number now, but I can see her plain as day. And she was towards the end of the calving season. She had a calf that day and she was fat. I just remember her being fat because it was towards the end of May. And the next year she had the 5th calf. So, I mean, she went from calving last to the calving first. And the reason that works is because she had green grass before she calved. She was in good shape. No, we didn't have to feed her to get her that way. That's what makes that work. So, Dick Divin knew things then that most of us didn't know, but still at that time, I had acquaintances that would say, what you're trying to do, calve in sync with nature, have an adapted animal, this and that. Why don't you just raise antelope? I mean, they're already adapted. And, you're right. I don't know how, but for the first probably 15, 20 years, I mean, I was a big target for, especially other seed stock producers. We were thinking and doing things much differently. So that's pretty much when I saw what the Palmers were doing in the late 1990s, we started calving in May. Then I tell people that, if I ever had to go back to April calving, I would. I just, I would sell the cows and go find something else to do or whatever. I can't do it. The other things we found out at that time is that we can get a high percentage of calves born in 30 days when you're in sync with nature. It just works that way. Couple other things is that we see very little predation. There's the predators in the snowy months of March and April. They're looking for an easy lunch, and a calf that's walked away from, that his mother's walked away from, that's an easy lunch. In May, we don't even talk about it anymore. The coyotes have something else to eat. It's just not an issue. Something else we noticed right quick was that the number of malpresentations went from maybe 5% to 0. And I still don't understand that, but we just never have to deal with it anymore, unless it's I don't know, I'm not sure I know how to do that. I had a university guy in North Dakota tell me one time it has to do with the photo period. And, it may have. And, calving in sync with nature very much has something to do with the photo period. I think when
hours of daylight.
Yeah, hours of daylight.
Yeah.
We all have about the same hours of daylight. Farther north you have, your days are longer. Farther south you have, days are shorter in the summertime. But anyway, that was I remember the heartache my dad had when he, one major storm wiped him out, and that basically you go into depression and things like that when that happens. I mean, he was ready to sell the cows. He didn't want to do that anymore.
Understandable. I mean, I think we've all been there, and I've shared on social media some of the things that have happened, and my suggesting that we perhaps look at calving in sync with nature has also brought down a little bit of wrath, and thinking that I don't have empathy for my fellow ranchers, which I absolutely do. I mean, we've been there. We've had cattle and sheep die by the thousands, literally, with some freak storms and things. And so we know what that's like. So were there any unintended consequences, Kit, as you made that transition? Things that you, either positive or negative things, you've talked about some of the positive, but one of the, well, I guess I'll follow that up. Anything that you didn't foresee that was like, man, that was tough to get through, or now that you could advise others on?
I can't think of any, no. I think when Don Adams at the University of Nebraska, I mean, that was the first university that actually took some university cattle and calved in March and calved in late May. They reported that they were getting, well, and I'll back up, but they reported their conception rates were going down. And, myself and all of my friends that did the same thing, we never saw that. I mean, conception rates went up. Mm-hmm. The one disadvantage that I saw immediately from calving, the 10th of April to the 1st of May, our cows at that time had too much milk. And we didn't know it in April, but if you're calving on green grass, you're going to blow out those bags. Yeah. And I've heard people say, well, I went back to April calving because I said, you learned the wrong lesson. Get rid of those high milking cows. We don't need that high of milk to raise a calf. and it's going to show up in a May calf and green grass calving. So that's probably the only negative I remember.
Yeah, and I remember when we largely custom graze, and we had a set of cattle in that were calving later, and Lori Lassiter was on the ranch, and I told him that problem, and he said, well, they have an operation for that. And I said, oh, really? For big bag cows. He says, yeah, you cut the cow's head off. Yeah. He said, basically, you just, nature's going to select against that. So you just have to help nature and be selective. Yeah. So the question here is, can we go over the numbers as far as weaning lighter calves? And that's something that I remember when I was at the SRM class, that you had some PowerPoints with the visuals of like the truckload of calves, lightweight calves versus heavy calves, and something kind of along those lines. If you can at least touch on that conceptually, Kit, of the profitability side.
Yeah, that was another thing that I threw into my presentations back when I was given a lot of them, was what Don Palmer experienced. So I would stop my presentation and I would ask, what do you think? Do you think they were weaning smaller calves when they moved from March to May? And I says, this isn't a trick question. A lot of times when you ask that to people that have done that, they'll say, no, there was no change, but that's usually not true. But Palmer said, yes, they were weaning smaller calves. I'm not going to throw out numbers. I don't remember numbers. The fact is they were weaning smaller calves, but they weren't that much smaller. In my mind, I thought, okay, we're going to have a whole herd of dinks running around out there. Can't sell. That's not true. The calves were not much smaller than they were before, but the powerful message there is that even though they were weaning smaller calves, they were weaning more total pounds of calves. And you just have to think about it a little bit. Okay, why is that? Well, less sickness and less death loss, less storms. As I know, one April storm can take half your calf crop. You have no way of saving those calves in that kind of a storm. So, if you can wean more total pounds, and if the calves are smaller, and this kind of goes to the two trucks, but which would you rather have, a truckload of 400-pound calves or a truckload of 600-pound calves? Both trucks weigh 50,000 pounds. And most ranchers back in the day, I could get in a fist fight over that question real quick. Forget the arrows. They just got mad.
Uh-huh.
And the problem is that they worked for decades trying to get up to those 600-pound calves. And I said, now, wait a minute. Do you want 50,000 pounds of 600-pound calves or 50,000 pounds of 400-pound calves? Which truck's worth the most? Year in and year out, the calves with the 400-pound calves are going to be worth at least $20,000 more than the truck with the 600-pound calves. And that's just one truckload. Mm-hmm. And it's the same way with the Palmers. They're weaning more calves, more total pounds that are smaller per calf, and getting paid more per pound for it. So it becomes kind of a no-brainer but it becomes a problem to those that have been working all their life to do what you said you shouldn't do.
Yeah. Because it's the old timers would say, a light live calf is worth a lot more than a dead big calf. So yeah. Sometimes getting those heavy weaning weights, they're definitely come with the cost.
There's a huge cost. And we might get into that later.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about kind of cow efficiency and how that plays into profitability, Kit. Because I know first of all, do you do EPDs on your bulls?
EPDs, yes.
And what do you target? What do you measure on that side?
We have registered cattle. We sell about 1,000 bulls a year. We have a sale in Texas, Alabama, Missouri, Nebraska, Montana, and 2 in Colorado. Mm-hmm. Most of our cattle, red and black Angus, they are registered. They do have EPDs. EPDs, I learned early, they kind of came into existence back in the 1970s. So when I started raising cattle on my own in the 80s, that's what we were doing. We had EPDs for weaning weight, yearling weight, birth, milk. And the human tendency is, this bull's better than this bull because he's got more higher EPD. Well, that's the reason the whole industry went downhill, is because EPDs work. It's the greatest tool in the world, but improperly used, it's going to increase your weaning weights. It's going to increase your cow size. It's going to decrease your stocking rates. It's going to decrease your profits. It works. I like to show, we have a quick sort where we can sort bulls at all of our bull sales. I've got 3 of them coming up, and I don't publicly talk about this, but I am today, I guess. I assume that your audience can take it.
Yeah.
But, when I say I don't pay much attention to the weaning weights or yearling weights, the 205s, the EPDs, I don't pay much attention to that, because if I did, we just tend to select for the wrong things. But let's take the Angus bulls. All of the Angus bulls, every one of them that we're selling in 3 bull sales this spring, are going to be, I think they're in the top 20% for birth weight and calving. Most of them are going to be in the top 10%. All of them are in the top 5%. All but one of them are in the top 5% for dollar EN, or maintenance centers, meaning that, for low maintenance cattle, we're in the top 5% of the entire Angus breed. And then when I have somebody that's able to take what I'm going to show him, every Angus bull we're selling is in the bottom 5% of the breed for weaning weight and yearling weight, and bottom 10 or 20% for milk.
Huh.
And yet, I don't know how many of your audience has received our newsletters and emails, but it's very common for somebody to go to our low maintenance bulls after using high growth bulls, and they come back and say, our weaning weights are higher than they were last year.
Huh.
Because our genetics fit their environment. The high growth genetics don't fit any environment except a feedlot.
Mm-hmm.
So, we're weaning as big or bigger calves. We're just putting that weight in a little different package. Before you know it, now you've got a bunch of thicker, easier fleshing, low maintenance cows with the right size and type of cow. Almost every rancher I know of can increase stocking rate by about 30%. And that's just with genetics. Then you throw in a grazing system of some sort, calving in sync with nature. Every time you're doing something correct, you're going to increase your stocking rate. From the very beginning, when everybody else was trying to get weaning weights bigger and bigger and bigger, I with the help of Chip Hines and others, I said, that doesn't make sense. We don't need bigger calves. We need more pounds per acre. So we're in the grass business. We have 10,000 acres of grass out there. How do we maximize the pounds per acre instead of pounds per cow? And they're almost distinct opposites. When you're still trying to go from 400 pound to 500 pound to 600 pound weaning weights, you are always going to increase cow size. You can't help it. Cow size has increased by 40%, probably more than that now, 40% in the last 50 years. And yet profit has not increased. I mean, cow weights increased, weaning weights increased, but profit is not increasing. As long as we're trying to maximize pounds per cow, we're not going to pay much attention to our grazing management. We're not going to worry about calving season, because those early calves always weigh more. Everything just kind of works against you. And in the long run, pounds per acre is what's going to keep you in business.
That's really good. So talk a little bit about what your ideal cow looks like phenotypically.
I don't like to talk about weight that much, but weight's a factor. But I'm going to talk more about frame score, because as I showed in a recent email, I think 2 weeks ago, 2 red cows standing side by side. Both red cows weigh the exact same. Both red cows are the same age. Both red cows had calved 60 days prior to this picture, one cow was short and fat, the other cow was tall and thin, but they all had the same weight, same everything. One cow at 60 days after calving was ready to breed back. The other cow was not going to breed back this year. You know, so weight without body condition score and or frame is meaningless to me. You know, I could talk to 100 producers and they all have 11 or 1,200 pound cows. And that's usually true until they sell the cows and then find out, well, maybe they have some 1,400 pound cows.
Yeah.
But frame size is, you know, it's highly correlated to low maintenance. So we're looking at 3 to 4 frame cows that weigh, if you want to talk about weight in Colorado, these 3 and 4 frame cows will weigh 1150 to 1250. I mean, they're not dwarfs. There's just more cow there and less legs.
Mm-hmm.
Our herds in Texas and Missouri and the Southeast, the same 3 and 4 frame cows will not weigh as much simply because of the environment. Our herds in the, you know, Montana, North Dakota, the same 3 and 4 frame cows are going to weigh more. You know, that's just the environment telling you what we need to have. You know, in South Texas, a 3 or 4 frame cow, you know, most of the year she needs to get rid of body heat. So she needs to have a large surface area for and not that much mass. So she can get rid of that heat. So the same cow, if I move her to Colorado, she's going to get thicker. She's going to have, you know, she's going to fill up that surface area because she's trying to hold her heat during the wintertime. So I'm looking at a cow with you know, when I look at a side view of a cow, a mature cow, I want to see 2/3 of her height in body, 1/3 in leg.
Yeah.
And when you look at the Angus Journal or anything else that everybody else has out there, you know, there's total opposites of that. I mean, there's 2/3 leg and 1/3 body, and you know, those cattle will not last in any environment other than a feedlot. I like to see a wedge-shaped cow and wedge-shaped bull. When I look at a cow from the side or from the top, I want her to be wedge-shaped, getting deeper and deeper as we go back, and getting wider and wider as we look down on the top. That's a wedge-shaped cow. The industry has their view of what a perfect market steer looks like. He looks like a rectangle. And because that perfect market steer looks like a rectangle, a lot of breeders think, well, that's what my cow and bull should look like, is a rectangle. And that's totally wrong. That's just going to produce subfertile animals.
Mm-hmm.
A bull is going to be wedge-shaped from the rear to the back or the front, you know, narrow, wide in the shoulder, narrow in the hip, you know, that sort of thing. That doesn't mean he doesn't have any muscle. That just means that he's massive in the front end and looks like a bull. Mm-hmm. And people look at those bulls and say, you know, man, you can't use that on heifers. And I say, you know, he didn't look that way the day he was born. That's testosterone working there. A bull should look like a bull. A cow should look like a cow.
Yeah.
So 3 and 4 frame cow, I maybe need to go a little bit further. The industry at this point, at one point it was even bigger, but at this point, I'd say 98% of the bulls being sold are 5 to 7 frame. Therefore, most cow herds are 5 to 7 frame. Now that doesn't tell you anything about their weight. They may not weigh as much as my three frame cows, but my 3 frame cows can get by on a lot less.
Yeah, makes sense. Is there any challenge with going with the smaller frame, selling into the commodity market? I think when you're direct marketing those easy fleshing cattle, especially if you're finishing on grass, you know, we'll buy those all day because that's what we really want for us. But in the commodity market, are they catching up to that, or is there still kind of a disparity there between what works for the rancher and what works for the probably what works for the rancher is going to work for the stocker operator, but
not for the feedlot.
Not for the feedlot, right?
I think there may always be a disparity. You know, and I have new customers come to me, and I mean they're terrified, thinking I'm going to produce they're going to buy my bulls and produce a bunch of midgets. And that's not the case. I mean, if you look at our 3 and 4 frame cows that weigh 1,200 pounds, they're not midgets.
Mhm.
We have 3 and 4 frame bulls that weigh a ton, 1,800 to 2,200 pounds. That's not a midget. Most 5 frame bulls cannot weigh that much on grass alone. So, we're dealing with big animals. So they get worried about that. And I say, we've been selling over 1,000 bulls a year for many years. We're telling people you can double your stocking or bull cow to bull ratio with our bulls. If the industry says 25, we're saying 50. And because our bulls are developed on grass and not grain, and because they're low input, I would say our bulls probably last twice as long as most bulls, and they breed twice as many cows. So the naysayer, I say, how many calves is that? Calculate that out. And where are those calves going? Nearly all of them are going through the sale barn, the feedlot, and the packing plant.
Yeah.
There's not that many grass finishers out there. But if you are grass finishing, what we have, what works the best in the ranch pasture works the best for grass finishing. If you are feeding your own steers in a feedlot, you're going to love what our genetics can do. But if you're a custom feedlot, they want just the opposite of what I want. They want something that's got a lot of growth in it. It's a lean, it's a late maturing type of animal that grows and grows and grows before it gets fat. That's why we have 1,600 pound steers coming out of the feedlot. But we cannot take that steer's sister and make her work anywhere. So there's going to be a discrepancy. I just don't see any of our customers saying, I went too far, I got to go back.
Yeah.
We just don't see that. But that is a major concern. If you just think of, for the average person to think about it, we just don't think it's worth worrying about. It's not what the feedlot guy wants. If you're feeding your own, you'll make lots of money.
Yeah. Okay, I appreciate you going there because I know that has been a concern. Michael asked a quick question here. How do you measure your frame score? He says sometimes he gets different measurements running the same cow through the chute. I don't know if there needs to be a little more context to that, but basically it's just a height measurement.
Yeah, frame score is height adjusted to age. So, cattle don't reach maturity till age 4 or 5. At that point, their frame score shouldn't change much. But on our 18-month-old bulls that we're selling, grass developed bulls, that's probably the one thing when we're evaluating and weighing and measuring bulls, that's the hardest measurement to get, simply because if just a little bit of slouching down or standing up or whatever can change that by 2 inches. So, we teach our guys that are doing that. We've got a frame height stick, I think is called. It's shaped like an L, upside down L. So it's got a little level up there. You put it on the ground, the same height as the feet. You put it over the back above the hip bones, and you try to level that bubble in the level. But we'll work. I mean, we'll look and see how he's standing. We just don't. It's not something you grab real quick like a weight.
Yeah.
And whoever asked that is right. I mean, an untrained person could run the same animal through the chute 10 times and probably get 8 different measurements.
Okay.
We use that as part of the formula we use to create our grass efficiency score. So it's real critical for us to make sure it's correct.
Yeah. Good question. Thank you for that. Maybe just to shift gears here a little bit and maybe even get a little philosophical here. Sometimes I know you like to do that, but it's more on the principles of profit. Just as you travel around the country and even around the world, and you look at other people's operations, Kit, and you are somewhat of in a consulting role as you send bulls throughout at least North America and probably even throughout the world. What principles do you see that are applicable regardless of the environment that when applied will lead to increased profitability on a farm or ranch?
Well, the paradigm, I mean, since the 1970s, and it accelerated in the 80s and 90s, you know, the paradigm to succeed is to increase weaning weights. That has not changed. I mean, outside of our network of customers, every place I go, I mean, they, even if they've been taught, they can't quit. You know, give them two bulls. One bull has more growth, a higher growth EPD than another bull. What are they going to pick? And in our program, we don't brag about this, but every Angus bull in our program is in the bottom 5% of the breed for growth. That's what works. It's not that that's what we picked, selected for. We just, you know, for 30 years, we've been selecting for cattle that can do the most with the least. And we want to increase stocking rate. We want to increase pounds per acre. After you put more and more pressure on there, take the feed away, add cows, you know, stop vaccinating, stop pouring on, stop all this other stuff that we don't really need to do. That's the type of cow that comes about. But to answer your question, I think nearly everybody is still in that old paradigm where they want to increase pounds per cow. Ironically, and this is Dr. David Lohman in Stillwater, Oklahoma. I mean, he's done a lot of research and says since 2001, there has been no increase in weaning weights since then in the commercial herd. So, you know, we kept increasing weaning weights and kept increasing cow weights at the same time. But he says, we're still increasing cow weights, but we stopped increasing weaning weights. Your environment cannot increase anymore. Nobody's environment can go that high. So, you know, that's and yet most people are still going to choose high growth over low growth because they can't stop thinking that. They're going to choose high milk over low milk. You know, milk is the worst trait to have. The EPD doesn't really mean much, but there's not a herd in North America, including Mexico and Canada, that needs more milk. I just have not seen it. They all have too much because they're selecting for bigger weaning weight. So if we can get people to get over that hump, this is the toughest paradigm most ranchers are ever going to face, is the difference between increasing production per cow and increasing production per acre. Once you get over that hump, it's all plain. It's easy to make money. That's when you say, okay, what else can we do? Well, calving in sync with nature is going to increase pounds per acre. Rotational grazing is going to increase pounds per acre. You know, it's kind of a combination of, you know, genetics and grazing and calving and, you know, just management principles that are geared towards that thought.
That's great. So I was going to ask that question. What should you measure? So you're saying one measurement that correlates with profitability would be measuring production per acre. Can you talk a little bit more about that? Are you talking about, you're not talking about dry matter production, but how many your stock?
Well, you probably have to be talking about dry matter production at the same time. But, you know, if I can run more cows on the same acre, producing more calves, you know, the difference between a 6-frame cow and a 3-frame cow, that 6-frame cow will never wean half of her body weight. She can't do it. I mean, unless you just run the silage truck to her all the time. That 3-frame cow can wean 50% of her weight year after year after year. So the fact that smaller cows can wean a higher percentage of their own weight without eating as much, I mean, it all kind of starts piling in there, and but I don't have any exact figures. I mean, people want me to say, okay, look at this ranch, and nobody really measures pounds per acre. The reason EPDs work so well is because they're so easy to measure. You know, it's easy to measure birth weight. It's easy to measure weaning weight. It's easy to measure yearling weight. Anything that's easy to measure is always going to go too far. You know, I had a discussion with some people in our discussion group recently about testicle size. same thing. You know, how big does it need to be to service 50 cows?
Mhm.
You know, do we need a wheelbarrow behind that bull to keep them off the ground? You know, it's easy to measure, and therefore we've gone too far.
Yeah. Yeah, interesting. Another question here from the chat is calving and sink only available using Pharo bulls, or could this be done with or could you do this program and calve and sink with what is already on the ranch?
You know, everybody knows the answer to that.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what the genetics are. I mean, whatever you have for genetics or cows, what's going to happen though is if you have high milk in genetics, just like I said, I had way more milk than I needed, and it showed when I went from April to May. I just have to bite the bullet and get rid of those high milk genetics. But whatever you have, you need to start. And you know, something else just popped into my mind. I'm sure you've dealt with Stan Parsons when he was still here and alive.
Yep.
Maybe not. Anyway, I was in a meeting with Stan once, and we were talking about calving in sync with nature, and they were saying, well, you know, how, and I hear this all the time, you know, they moved from February calving to March calving to April calving. I said, well, you're almost there. What's taking so long? And Stan dealt with that question. He says, have you ever been water skiing? So I'll just throw this out at you. You know, have you been water skiing? And you'll say, yeah, I've done it a little bit. And I'm going to say, well, next summer after all this snow melts, I'm going to come to Nevada, and I want you to take me water skiing. I've never been skiing before, and you're going to take me to the lake. You're going to, you know, tell me what to do back there. It takes me forever to get my skis on and lined up. And then I holler up there and I said, drive slow, because this is my first time. How's that going to work?
Not at all.
It's not going to work. You know, and that's when you move from February calving to March to April, you know, you're never going to get on top of the water till you get on top of the water. You're just sucking water. And I don't see any reason to put it off. But yeah, to answer the original question, no matter what cows you have, move.
Yeah.
Move in sync.
Yep. And it's not, I appreciate what you said. And there's been some other comments from the Facebook post. In sync with nature is not a date on the calendar, because it can vary so much from one part of the country to another. So a friend of ours is in Dixie Valley, Nevada, and the antelope have their young there in February and March. They get green up there a lot earlier than we do. And so for him, they calve a lot earlier, but they're still in sync with nature.
Right. That's what I saw in Chihuahua, which I was surprised. We visited 5 ranches down there. All of them have been in holistic management. And, you know, I was just shocked that, okay, in sync with nature there is late July. But it is.
Because it's not that they deal with snow there. It's just when they're green.
When you get your rain.
Yeah.
And I had a lot of people on fescue. Your audience may not know what an indified infected fescue is.
Some do.
From eastern Kansas all the way to the Atlantic Ocean, it's taken over. It hasn't been around that long, but it pushed everything else out. And so I've kind of said, okay, in sync with nature and or your forage resources. So calving in sync with your forage resources on fescue is fall calving.
Mm-hmm.
The worst time to calve in fescue country is probably May, because that fescue gets so toxic, you know, it increases the cow's body temperature by about 2 degrees when it's already hot.
Mm-hmm.
She's not going to breed. So in sync with nature, some places isn't going to make sense. You have to be in sync with your forage resources.
Good point. What other, and we'll open it up. Be thinking about questions. Feel free to type them in the chat, but here in just a couple minutes, we'll just open it up for questions and you can unmute. But Kit, from a management philosophy side, what would you say has made the biggest difference for you in transitioning to the point where you're at, where now, I think it's safe to say you are profitable, you are having an impact within the industry. And, you're definitely somebody who others can look to and follow. And anything that hasn't been mentioned that comes to mind, maybe even from a mindset side, or from building the right team, or things along those lines, Kit.
I don't know, the paradigm of pounds per acre and pounds per cow, anybody, once you get over that, make that shift, things become easier. I think the fact that I don't mind going against the status quo because it needs it. I don't mind being different from everybody else. I can think back to when we started out as a commercial rancher, and as soon as I got to seeing what everybody else was doing, trying to get as big as they could, as fast as they could, I said, here's a great opportunity. Somebody needs to do the right thing. So we got into seed stock, registered seed stock production. I think you need to be persistent, but I've often thought, and I see a lot of new people getting into the bull business, and most of them are not going to last 5 years. I mean, that's a rule of thumb that you can take to the bank. And the reason they aren't is because they're trying to mimic one of the big guys that's doing everything wrong. And I think back at that time, I did everything the opposite of what the industry is doing. And had I not done that, I wouldn't have been a success today. I was antagonistic within the industry. I still am. I didn't know it at the time, but we use the concept of being a herd quitter. I mean, I was a herd quitter before I even came up with that word. But you can't succeed in any business if you're doing things just like everybody else. But being different doesn't mean you're going to succeed either. You have to be different for the right reasons. And I think that's just, I never thought I never questioned what we were doing. As I always thought, okay, I'm right, status quo is wrong, and eventually they're going to come our direction, and that's happened. The reason we went from selling 6 bulls, in 1991 to over 1,000 bulls a year now, somebody believes in what we're doing and it's working. But it would have been real easy to just throw my hands up and say, I'm going to go do something else. I couldn't do that. I believed too much in what I was doing to walk away.
Yeah. Well, we appreciate that you've had the fortitude to stick with it, because it's not, I'm sure, has not been an easy road. And with what we're doing,
I enjoyed it though. I mean, it wasn't a hard road for me. It would have been hard for, if my wife took that personally, it'd be hard for people, like a lot of people, but it wasn't hard for me.
Yeah, that's good. So do you feel like that was maybe part of your God-given mission to do what you do and have be a catalyst for change? Definitely.
We send out a weekly devotion, and those who receive that are going to say, this guy, he sees things differently, and I do. I mean, we took what Jesus started as a church, and we've created monsters that shouldn't be around.
Yeah. So maybe talk just a little bit. One of our passions with AgSteward, hence the name Steward, is stewardship. And from your perspective, or a biblical perspective, what does that mean to you, Kit, to be a steward?
I don't guess I write about it sometimes, but I don't think or talk about it much. You and I are stewards because it's not really ours. We've been given the responsibility to take care of it, to make it better, to pass it on to the next generation, those sort of things. To me, that's what stewardship is.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't, it's not me, belongs to God. And, if I can improve on what I was handed, then, I think I've done what I should have done.
Amen. And definitely concur with that. how I view it as well is that we're just temporary stewards here, and it's not only our privilege but also our obligation to manage the best way that we can these stewardships that we've been given, including God's creatures, the livestock, the land, our fellow brothers and sisters, our fellow man, our families, and the knowledge that we've been given. Because if we don't utilize the knowledge that we've been given, just like anything else in the parable of the talents, it will be taken from us. It'll be given to somebody else who will use it, who will take it and appreciate it and share it. So that's my goal with AgSteward, is to continue to do that and bring you the opportunities to learn from some great people like Kit. I'm going to drop in the chat here. A few of you last time filled out the assessment, and invite you to do that again. It's been great to reach out to some individuals and learn more about their operations, and sometimes having that perspective of somebody looking over the fence and being able to see where your strengths and weaknesses are can be very valuable. So that's what we're offering with this assessment, is just an opportunity to fill out some basic information and book a call with us to see where you're at and maybe where your opportunities are, the current challenges that you might be facing. Because the problem is sometimes we don't see them when they're right in front of us. And I know I've been guilty of that. It's taken somebody who says, hey, have you thought about this? Or Jared, this habit keeps occurring in your life. Why is that? Why do you keep running into debt? Why do you keep relying on that? Why is it that you consistently run out of grass before you run out of year? And so sometimes we create our own paradigms, which create a fence around us, and it doesn't allow us to progress. So good question here. So yeah, if you fill out that Google form, I'll get a notification when you do that, and then we'll reach out to you and we'll book a time to visit. Question here, and again, whoever has questions, you can raise your virtual hand. If you know how to do that, it should be down at the bottom of your screen under the reactions, and we can unmute you, or you can type it in the chat. And we'll probably take 10 or 15 more minutes here with Kit, if you're good with that. Kit, are you good? And then,
Yep.
So
that's about all I can give you, probably.
That's
But I'll give
perfect. This has been great. So yeah, we'll probably go till quarter after. When calving in May, when are you weaning?
I always get that question, and I don't think it matters. We want to have something locked in to where, okay, grandpa always calved in this month, grandpa always weaned in this month. Doesn't matter. I may wean in 90 days if I'm in a severe drought. I may leave and have left the heifer calves on their mothers for 10 months when we've got adequate stockpiled forage. Doesn't matter. Just we need to start using our head and not the calendar. Tax planning screws up some good ranching too.
Yeah.
We need to have freedom from a lot of things, but I would say that the most profitable people that do these guys are lazier than I am. They calve in May and June. They won't wean their calves until right before calving in May and June again, like March and April. They run those little starved out calves on grass, and then they explode, and then they can, compensatory gain will, you leave them on those cows all winter, they're not gaining much. They're working as hard as the cow is to just survive. But compensatory gain, when you get green grass, they just explode. Cows that lose weight in the wintertime explode when they get green grass. But at that point, you can get that, you can catch up by the end of summer and throw them in a feedlot or sell them. Or take those little, those calves off their mothers at 10 months of age. There's a huge demand in the spring for grass cattle. If you don't have the forages to get the compensatory gain, you'll get paid for it because they can see a green calf compared to a calf that's been fed all winter.
Yeah, good question. So along with that, you said you kept your heifers on, and I know there's been a lot of talk. Alan Williams was a speaker on a podcast, and Steve Campbell has been one of our guests talking about epigenetics. Can you Can you speak to that a little bit of having the value of the heifer raised in that environment?
Well, from a lazy man's point of view, if that calf is with his mother, I'm not having to worry about it. I don't have to go to another place to break water or feed or whatever. If the ground's covered up with snow and we're grazing grass through the snow, that calf will learn how to eat snow for water just because that's what his mother's doing. So, from that perspective, it just makes sense. From an epigenetics perspective, and I can't quote all the figures, but calves that have been left on their mothers until naturally weaned at 10 months, their rumen is going to be 15% more efficient than calves that are weaned early. Now, over a period of time, that's huge. I mean, you've got females going back into your herd and steers going to the feedlot, but the rumen is that much more efficient.
Yeah, that's hard to put a measurement on the value of that, right? But let's see. Anybody else have a question here? You guys are awfully quiet today. We've got a good group here, but maybe you've just covered everything, Kit.
Maybe so. I'm not very big, but they say I'm pretty intimidating too.
Yeah, we've got a pretty good diverse group. Looking at some of the people that I know from throughout the United States.
I have a question.
Yeah, thanks for jumping ahead.
Thanks. I just have a real small sheep operation, and I know this isn't a sheep webinar, but I was curious because our sheep are seasonal breeders. We've just kind of experimented with letting them breed up and self-wean, and we run into the problem of whether we should try to sell things or sell them early or sell them later, because we'll have to overwinter. Because we can pull it off that we can sell lambs in the same year that they're born, when you can't necessarily do that with calves. But I'm just curious what your thoughts are on that process and how you make a decision with having to buy hay versus breeding earlier or later.
And we can sell calves the same year they were born. A lot of ranchers do. I mean, they're born in the spring, they're sold in the fall. So that's in my decision making, though. I have to look at my forage resources. I don't think if our whole program is based upon feeding hay every year, it's going to be hard to make a living. So, if I've got stockpiled dormant forage for whatever to eat, I'd be more likely to keep them. But if you base your whole program on buying hay and feeding hay a certain number of months, it's just tough. We got to get over that.
Yeah, and that's like Jim Garish is going to be our next speaker. For those of you who are on now, the information will be going out, but that's one of his mantras is, get the hay out, kick the hay habit. I think you wrote a book about it.
Yep.
And those direct costs of substitute feed, as they teach in Ranching for Profit, not supplemental feed, or what kills profit. So
yeah,
it's a quick question here. Are you doing any grass-fed programs with your cattle?
We have, I don't know how many of our customers are doing that, but that's become a bigger and bigger event with our customers. We don't do it right now. Well, we do. I mean, our open heifers we send them to be finished, or we finish them ourselves. 2 or 3 years ago, we Cactus Feeders in Texas came to us because Tyson Food, the big packer, said we want a source of domestic grass-fed beef, no hormones, no antibiotics. And so Cactus came to us, for that source. And for a couple of years, we were doing a program through Cactus for Tyson.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was going to change the world, but Tyson changed his mind and started promoting fake meat. So
yeah,
I never had a contract with Tyson Foods, but our genetics, when we talk about grass efficiency, we're talking about early maturity easy fleshing, low maintenance. That type of animal is what I need in my heifers to, okay, they need to stop growing up and start putting on fat, because if they're still trying to make their maintenance requirements, they're not putting on fat and they're not going to breed. Now, the exact same animal is going to perform outstanding in a grass finish program. It's not the type of animal, again, the feedlots prefer late maturing, hard keeping animals that just keep growing without putting on fat.
So we've actually bought some of Kit's genetics from a fellow rancher here and finished them on grass, and they do really well. You know, just real moderate frame, easy fleshing, and that's what us grass finishers want all day. So if anybody out there has heiferettes, especially after this tough winter, that are similar genetics, we'd definitely be a buyer for those, because that's what we look for, is, you know, an open heifer, an open 2-year-old heifer that'll finish this season.
Or 3-year-old.
Yeah, or even 3-year-olds. Sometimes our buyers, they'll ding us if it's over 36 months, but for our own customers, yeah, we'll go up to 4 years and still cut them and not grind them. So
Yeah, heifers are easier to finish than steers. And if they're open 2-year-olds or 3-year-olds, they've got the age to, they're just ready to finish now.
yeah, they're already done growing and ready to. So yeah, that's what's neat about Kit's genetics, is they really do work on grass, and it's not that they don't work in the other environment, but on the ranch side, they're the kind that'll make you money. So question here from the Willamette Valley. It gets muddy, to say the least. I'd love some input on running mother cows through wet, muddy winter. It seldom freezes, the mud's solid. It's my experience the grass doesn't stockpile well in the wet. Any suggestions? And if you want
I
to
have
jump
very
on,
little
Dave,
experience with mud.
you'd like to see mud probably, huh?
Yeah, we're in a 12 to 14 inch rainfall area. We're still in a major drought. We've had a couple of snows, but man, we could use what you guys are dealing with. So I can see that being a huge problem. I don't guess I would have a solution to it. The grazing people are going to say move faster. More paddocks, more faster move, and I think, that makes sense to me.
Yeah, definitely. If you want to reach out, like we can kind of help you through that. I mean, my thought is, do you have hillsides? Do you have other places where you can get up and stockpile feed? But I'm not super familiar with the Willamette Valley, but I do know some other places in Oregon that are similar. So probably better take this as our last question, folks. But what is Kit Pharo's best way to understand and learn about weather and climate? Does he watch the NOAA acronym weather webinars for regions of the USA? Again, Fawn, if you want to give some more context to that, you can unmute. Did that question make sense?
If whoever asked that can add to it, well, that would help.
Yeah, go ahead, Fawn. Click your unmute button.
Hey, I'm actually not a rancher, but our family was and is. I'm considering it, but it was Midwestern ranching, hold Charlet, finishing, lots of beef. And I'm an ecologist and I'm a scientist and a park ranger naturalist. I don't have any practical experience and I'm not doing it, but I am considering it. I'm actually considering doing this. So the thing I'm asking is that I follow NOAA and I follow climate and weather. My thesis was on sea level rise. I'm an East Coast person, and the East Coast is going through, just to give you a continental look and scope of this thing, is we're in neutral and previously a triple dip La Nina. Now we're going to El Nino. And just today, the Eastern region presented that means that the Eastern coast Atlantic is going to get more storms and precipitation. It is currently in D1 to D2 drought, which is sort of like weird because we get like 60 inches of rain, we shouldn't be in that. So I'm thinking, well, that's kind of useful to keep up with that. So I was wondering, my grandfather, Dowell, the rancher guy, I don't know if you call it rancher here in Central Illinois, but he listened to the weather report, and we would visit, and phew, that's what you heard, pounds, how many, just like bushels of soybeans, bushels of corn, how much those cattle were making, and what was the weather report for today. We were going to go out and look at his fields and his herds, and it was just really interesting. So that's why
I've reread.
We've got places all around the continent.
I've reread your question, and I think I get it, but I don't get it. There are, when we are farmers and ranchers, what are the three things we talk about when we get together?
Weather, market, government.
Yes. Out of any of those, do we have any effect on them? No.
Not directly, not today.
So I don't, I'm going to watch the drought monitor map, but probably as much as anything else. I can't affect or, change what's going on. I can plan and work with what's going on. And I think the reason we like to talk about the weather and the market and the government is because we can't do anything about it. And that keeps us, if we can blame the government or the weather or the market, we don't have to change anything. So I see that as being a cop-out for nearly everybody in agriculture. What you have is what you have. Now, I'm not saying don't plan ahead. You have to plan ahead, but if I have 70 paddocks of grass that I'm rotating my cows through, I should be able to tell you how long that grass is going to last before I have to sell cows or move cows. That's what I do. I can't make it rain. I don't even want to know about all that stuff. I just need to take care of what I can control.
Pretty good philosophy, Kit. I appreciate that. Thanks, Vaughn, for the question. Any final comment that you have, Kit, before we jump off?
No, it's been fun. I have all this stuff rolling around up there. It's nice to let it out once in a while.
Well, we're grateful to be on the receiving end of some of that. So
I will say that we do mail out weekly PCC updates, weekly devotions. If anybody's not receiving those and would like to, just go to our website, PharoCattle.com, and there should be places there to sign up.
Yep, and you've got some bull sales coming up like next week, right?
Next Monday in Texas, next Thursday in Missouri, and then we come back to our Colorado sale.
Okay. Yeah, so probably the best thing, Fawn, is just go to the Pharo Cattle Company website and then reach out. Kit's great about responding, and sure appreciate that he was willing to jump on. So PharoCattle.com, willing to jump on this webinar. We're honored to have him as our guest. If you like this and want to stay in tune with what we're doing with AgSteward, we encourage you to do that. This recording will go out as a podcast, and that podcast name is The Profitable Steward, and it is live on all podcast platforms now. So I've got 2 up already. Alan Williams, our first guest speaker, is on there, and then my introduction. Kit's will actually go out next Monday. We're going to bump it in the queue and put it out next, just because of some of the timely things here with what we're doing. He's also can be found on Facebook. So The Profitable Steward, AgSteward.fyi is our information, and look forward to seeing you on future webinars. Kit, thank you so much for taking.
Thank you for asking.
With us. Okay, have a blessed day, everybody. Take care.